Hi guys, welcome back to PTSD Through the Darkness. I'm Trevor Swenson, sharing my personal journey with PTSD and trauma and stressor disorder. And I wanted to talk about a topic today that is very important to me, and I really hope that you give it some thought yourself if you are struggling with trauma that was brought on by no fault of your own. Which brings me to my first point. I need you to understand very clearly that it is not your fault that you have trauma and stressor disorder or that you develop PTSD after something traumatic or a traumatic relationship or a traumatic event uh, in your life. But it is your responsibility to take the steps to find healing, and it is your responsibility to minimize the damage that is done by you yourself to those people that are around you that mean so very much to you, whether it be your family, whether it be your friends, whether it be your coworkers, whether it be people you're leading. The topic today is breaking that trauma cycle. And as painful as PTSD is, and as much of a tour of patience and endurance that it is very important that you work very hard to make sure that that doesn't go on to the next generation. Um, you're going to be, I shouldn't say you will. I know that what I struggled with anger. I struggle with major depressive disorder. I struggle with anxiety. I struggle with flashbacks. I struggle with dissociation, a dissociative feeling. I struggled with alcohol and chemical dependency, and all of these things that come with PTSD are absolute, very fertile grounds to cause trauma to spread further and affect people around you. And I want to make sure that you are challenged, whether it be by me or by a medical professional, to make sure that the trauma cycle ends with you. Think of this example. It's not your fault that your dad treated you horribly or abusively as you were growing up, but it is your responsibility to figure out what you're going to do with that hurt and with that pain. When I was struggling with alcohol, one of the most healing things that shoved me into a what I want to call a mode of I'm going to kick this thing's rear end, meaning alcoholism, was when a professional that had been doing this for decades looked at me and said, I need you to know that this is not your fault. The alcoholism is not your fault, but it's 100% your responsibility to make sure you do something about it moving forward. And it was very powerful to me because it got rid of 50% of the equation of trying to figure out, was I weak? Was I making poor judgment calls? Like trying to figure out the me part of it. And when you have somebody loving and compassionate that is very focused on you getting well, and they say something deep like that, that takes that burden of trying to figure things out off of you, it is very powerful. But just as powerful as the other 50% of that conversation, which it's your responsibility to make sure you do something about it. I struggle with depression. I've because of PTSD, I have major depressive disorder, which is depression that lasts a long time and is very intense. And you can think of the situations that I might be put in as a person to take that out on other people, and also do it in a way that is negative or isn't, it's passive, When you think about my daughter, for instance, even though I feel like I have an absolute wet cloak over the top of me, a cold, wet cloak over the top of me, when my daughter wants my attention, when my daughter does something that's absolutely amazing, I need to dig deep and I need to make sure that she is not affected or is affected as little as possible from my major depressive disorder that came along with my PTSD. The same thing with my anxiety. I need to make sure that my anxiety doesn't override uh, interaction with people that I love, that I don't lash out, that I don't say dumb things, that I work very, very hard at making sure that I'm really thinking and I'm being very, very proactive in how I work through my disability. It's a very, very real thing. The same thing goes with mood swings. Uh, there will be times when people look at you or interact with you or do something with you that it's very easy to appear that you are not engaged whatsoever, that you're not enjoying yourself, that you're not paying attention. And in that case, it's very important to communicate with people that you love how you're feeling, why it is that way, and ask for grace through those times. And at the same time, become very, very self-aware to make sure that the trauma cycle ends with you. One of the dangers of alcoholism that I found to be extremely damaging is that it masks the people, the person, to other people that they know and love. You say things, you do things that are not in your character, that are not who they know you to be. You need to attack that and you need to be aggressive with that because words carry life and death. Words matter. Your children will absolutely remember how you made them feel during that time frame of struggling with chemical addiction or chemical dependency, alcoholism, whatever it might be for you, if that's part of your PTSD battle. And that matters because attached to those kids are grandkids, spouses, in-laws, their friends, and it matters. It really, really matters that the trauma cycle ends with you. That doesn't make it any less painful. This challenge to you doesn't make it any less painful to go through PTSD, but it gives a long-term purpose. If you think about how going through the trauma cycle incorrectly plays out versus being aggressive and saying, this ends with me, the words that come out of your mouth and the communication that you have with people will be that much more impactful for generations to come, and that matters. It's not your fault that you have PTSD, but it is your responsibility to heal. It is your responsibility to get help. It is your responsibility to communicate with those that you love exactly what you're going through and how you're feeling. I'm going to talk about how I communicated my battle with PTSD in a very strategic manner, keeping people on the inside very, very well informed, and then forming groups of people outside of that were on a need-to-know basis or that could know a little bit about what I was battling and what I was going through. And we'll talk about that in an upcoming episode called The Circles of Communication. But I want you to know that any excuses that you would make on how you treat people because of PTSD, how you might lash out, how you may be angry, how you may be resentful or unforgiving, I completely understand. I completely understand. And that is exactly how you feel when you have PTSD, is you feel like those negative emotions and actions are raw and they are on the surface and they are warranted. And that's why I'm challenging you to think ahead and to think of the people that are closest to you, that mean the most to you, that you love so much, and make sure that you let them know through your actions and your words that regardless of how difficult PTSD is on you and your family, you are going to do your absolute best to make sure that other people don't quote unquote pay for your pain and that it stops with you. Too often, pain and trauma are transferred down the chain of generations and families, and we need to learn how to harness that in. Trauma is going to happen, but we are also in control of stopping that trauma, stopping that hurt from going further than it needs to go. And I know you've got it in you to be able to do that. It's going to take work. It's hard work, but it is so worth it to years down the road as people find out about your battle and they realize what you were up against and they realize how well you treated them in spite of what you were up against. That's what legacy is all about. And I want your legacy to be of love and of compassion and of edification and of building people up in spite of the hurt and the trauma that you're going through, because that will be healing to you. That's all I've got for this time. I can't wait to see you next time. Thank you for listening to this. I hope it was helpful to you. Break the trauma cycle. Make sure that whatever trauma it is that you're walking through, that you're doing whatever you can humanly possibly do to make sure the trauma stops with you. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to hit the notification button. We'll be talking next time again about another topic, and I'm really, really looking forward to being of help and of encouragement and of hope through your battle with PTSD or trauma and stressor disorder. See you next time.